All right, Erev Tov, everybody, or Boker Tov for those who are in Israel, where Rabbi Leibtag is. Always, his love of Torah is unmatched. It's 3:30 a.m. in Israel, and Rabbi Leibtag will always teach Torah. Reminds me, of the famous story of the Rav. Rav Soloveitchik said if I would come at 2 o'clock in the morning to the dorms in YU and tell them, I'm giving a shir, everybody would come and they get up at 2 in the morning to come to the shir. But I think then he said, but if they had no interest in talking when he talked about non-Gemara stuff. But anyway, so we didn't have to get up at 3:30 a.m. But I want to thank Rabbi Leibtag for his love of Torah that should be spread far and wide. And Bakasha and Parshat Vayera, it's a good parsha. So if you're going to get up early in the morning, this
It
is
includes Vayashkimu Baboker, right?
Right? I'm sorry. Vayashkem Boker. That's right.
Yeah.
This week's Parsha. There you go. Vayashkem. Okay. Oh my gosh. Okay. Bakasha.
Okay. So the title, I think, did they announce the title or not?
Have the title.
Yeah, it was in the email. It was in the email. I'll put it up.
Okay, good. Alrighty. So the title I'd like to use, it's not the topic, but I like the title. It's When God Talks to Himself. So we'll take a quick discussion, and just for the fun of it, to make sure you guys are awake, give me examples of God talking to Himself in Sefer Bereshit.
Oh, let's make a man.
Oh, no, that's not talking to Himself. That's talking to His board members.
Okay.
No, it's God. When God makes man, He doesn't just talk to Himself. He says, unless he's talking with other people. It's unclear who they are, but it's not other humans, that's for sure, because man wasn't made yet. So the rabbis say he was talking to his celestial board members.
Well, he
When
talks.
Hashem, sorry, I was going to say, "Hamachasani me Abraham."
Yeah, that's this week's parsha. Okay.
Right.
And anything
Well,
before then?
yes, well, God said he's sorry that he made man and he wants to destroy the world.
Okay, that's before the flood.
Yes.
Right.
And then after the flood, he says, he's not going to do that again.
He's sorry. Yeah, I like that. That's the best example of anthropomorphism, where God does something, he regrets what he did, and then he regrets that he regretted, and says he's never going to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that. It's one of my favorites. How about, I like to say God's been talking to himself ever since day one.
Day 1 through 6.
Day 1, 2, 3. On day 6, right before he makes man, for some reason he moves to the plural. Okay. Then when he's considering making a partner for man, he talks to himself again. Remember, Lo tov adam. No, it's not good for man to be alone. When God wrote the first version of Lonely Man of Faith, when he makes when he makes one man.
To us, he's not talking to himself. God doesn't talk to himself. He's talking to us.
I mean, it could be, but Chumash, keep that in mind, because according to Chumash, it sounds like he's talking to himself. Now, he could be talking to himself in order to talk to us. But I want to pay attention to, but keep in mind when he talks to us, okay? By the way, does God ever talk to, that'll get me off on a tangent. I got to be careful, because I'm limited to an hour.
Rabbi Leibtag, I thought before, I thought that was a narrative in Bereshit before he made man and before he made Chava. I thought that was just
but the narrator is telling us that God talked to himself. There's from day one, from day zero, there's an omniscient narrator in Chumash who makes comments every once in a while and tells us things. But now we attribute that omniscient narrator to God, and Moshe writes it down. But the way Chumash, God's talking to himself. And he listens to himself also, he does it. Either way, what I'm getting at is all through Breshit, God talks to himself quite often. Day 1 through 6, on day 6 when he makes man, when he makes Ezer Kenegdo, when he makes woman, when he's upset when he throws him out of Gan Eden, I think he's talking in the plural again, isn't he? I think I might even have them all written down here. 1 second. Where are we? Share my screen. It's not important for the source sheet. This is just a quick introduction. This is our source sheet. We wanted something else. We wanted Pesach and Stone. Your conversations. Here we go. So we had a conversation between man and God. We're going to get to Sdom, not to worry. But man and Gan Eden. Oh no, that's when he talks to man already, by mistake. That's between God and man. God talking to himself is through creation, before the flood, after the flood. And then 3 times, if I'm not mistaken, he talks in the plural when he makes man, when he throws men out of Gan Eden, and when he scatters them after Migdal Bavel. Now, God talking to man is even less often when man sins in Gan Eden, with the famous Ayeka. That's the first time God has a conversation with man. It's about getting in trouble. A similar conversation with Cain. Remember? And Cain gives him a response. And then last week, we had those are the 2 conversations between man and God that relate to punishment. The first dialogue between God and man, which is significant, is with God with Avram Avinu. That was last week's Parsha, where we're talking about how God starts the argument. The conversation. And in this week's Parsha, we have his dialogue with Avram Avinu about Sdom. Let me just summarize that, and we'll see how important it is. And what I'm getting at, everyone knows the first 11 chapters have a different status than the rest of Chumash for a simple reason. Sefer Breshit has a purpose, but the first 11 chapters are universal, and God picks Avram Avinu and starts a special relationship with Avram Avinu in chapter 12. Now, for some reason, in the first 11 chapters, which are setting the stage for God picking Avram Avinu, consistently God is either talking to himself or talking in the plural, and we're not sure who he's talking to, but before every major decision that God makes, he's talking to himself. And then it suddenly stops in after Migdal Bavel, and it happens only one more time, and that's in Parshat Vayera, in the story of Sdom. As far as God having dialogues with man in Sefer Breshit, there's 2 dialogues with Adam and then one with Cain, when in relation to sin and punishment, and there are 2 dialogues with Avram Avinu, one in Parshat Lech Lecha, Brit Ben Abtarim, and a dialogue with Avram Avinu in this week's Parsha. There's a small dialogue with Avimelech, but I'll leave that alone for now. But with our ancestors, 2 major dialogues with Avram Avinu, no dialogue with Yitzchak, no dialogue with Yaakov, done with the sons. And then when we get to Moshe Rabbeinu, the burning bush, that's the rest of Chumash is a dialogue between God and Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, I want to try to give a reason why the last dialogue, why 2 of these points come together. In Parshat Vayera, we'll have the last dialogue between God and man, in Bereshit, between God and our ancestors, with Abraham Avinu, and it'll be the last time God talks to himself. Okay, so let's get to work, and I'm trying to show you what's going on. Just as a reminder, what's the topic of his dialogue in chapter 15 in Bereshit? Just in a nutshell. When God talks to Abraham Avinu, remember how God starts the conversation? How does God initiate the conversation? He says, Al tira Avraham, don't worry, Avraham, I'll protect you, Anochi magen lach. That comes up in Shmona Esrei quite often. And you have great schar. Abraham wants to know, why shouldn't I worry? And he promises him children. And then we have a conversation, a second conversation about, I took you out of Ur Kasdim, I took you out of Mesopotamia to give you this land to conquer. And Abraham wants to know how and when it'll happen. And the whole promise of going down to, but later becomes going down to Egypt, being enslaved, being oppressed, being saved from that oppression, punishing your oppressor, and only afterwards getting the land of Israel in a covenantal promise. That's called Brit Ben Abtarim. And then our story of Sdom, and I want to try to explain how they're all related. Okay, so let's get to work. But the first thing I want to do is I want to share with you, if you have a Tanakh card, it's even better. But let me open up here's the screen. Okay. I want to open up, that's not what I want, that's a PDF file, my mistake. I want you to open a regular Chumash and take a look at the Parshiyot in Perek Yud Chet. Remember in Chumash, Parshiyot are usually like, here we are. Parshiyot are usually quite similar to paragraphs. And then, here we go. Open up Breshit with the Sukkot. Here we go. Remember, in Parshat Breshit, every paragraph, these are the Parshiot. Every day is a Parshiyah. And when we get to Gan Eden, all of a sudden, there's a long one. What's important for me for today, in Perek Yudchet in Breshit, it's a very long Parshiyah. It's a long Perek. How long is it? 33 psukim. But there are no Parshiyah breaks in Perek Yudchet. Perek Yudchet continues without the Parshiyah break. You know, Perek Yudchet
Until Parakhov.
continues all the way to Perek Chav. In other words, we have 40, 30, like somewhere between 70 and 80 psukim without any paragraph break. Now, when that happens, that means everything is connected, even though they're different stories. So let's take a look. Let's take a look in Perek Yudchet, and let's simply take a quick look what the first topic is. God appears to Avram in Elonim Amrei. He's standing outside the tent, and then we have the famous remaining 7 psukim that highlight Avram's hospitality. I'm sure we're all familiar. It's the first Aliyah. We read it yesterday morning. It's read it this morning. It's Thursday morning. And then what happens? Basically, more than I think anywhere else in Chumash, we describe Avram and Sarah's hospitality and going out of the way to help their guests. Again, that's the first topic. And these same guests come and tell them the news of the birth of Yitzchak, that in a year's time they have a child, and as we like to say, it's nothing to laugh about. So that's topic number 2. Topic number 3 is the story of Sdom, God telling Avraham Avinu about Sdom, and then the actual messengers going to Sdom in chapter 19, and what happened in Sdom and saving Lot and destroying the city. So that's the whole big unit, and we have to see how they're all connected. Now, what I was focusing on is on the last time God talks to himself, and here's what I want to explain. I'm going to use an English Hebrew source sheet, which will be a lot easier. I want to take the last line of one last halacha that we learn about Hachnasat Orchim. Look in Pasuk Tetzayin. Vayikumu misham anashim yashkifu al pnei Sdom, v'Avram homech imam l'shalcham. The 3 men get up after they had that meal and that conversation. As they're getting up, they're taking a look at the Jordan Valley from Sdom. If you're in Hebron on a nice clear day and you're high up on a mountain, you can see the Jordan Valley beautifully from there. You look at Sdom, and Avram is walking them on their way out, and we learn from there what's called when you have company, you walk them to the door. Okay. Now, let me stop the share for a minute. Someone tell me what you remember. How does this conversation begin? What does God tell Avram Avinu he's going to do? Just a quick reminder. I want to make sure we're all... From what you remember, what is it that God tells Avram he's going to do?
At the very beginning, he doesn't say anything.
Oh, no, forget the first...
We don't.
The first dialogue...
About Sdom you're talking?
Yeah, what's God going to do to Sdom?
He says he hears the screaming that Rabba Chatatam.
Yeah, there's a scream coming out, and he wants to destroy the city, and then Avram starts arguing not to do it. That's how the thing. And the question people always like to ask is, how come Avram prays for Sdom and not for his own son?
But before
That's a different topic.
Hashem speaks to himself.
I claim that he's not praying for Sdom and he does pray for his son, but that's a different share. But I want to talk about Sdom.
But
if we look carefully what he says,
before Abraham, Hashem, Vayomer Hashem, Zakat Sdom v'Amorah ki Rabbah. He talks to himself.
Let me know.
Yeah. Okay. So what's he saying? Let's take a look at that pasuk. Let me share my screen now. And look what he says. Let me get
but the texture is not spoiled like the other one was.
I'm not going to buy any more until it becomes.
Okay, 1 second. Let me do a quick mute. Give me a second.
I did it already.
Oh, you got the mute. Okay, good. Okay. So let's take a look at, we don't want this one. These were the conversations. We want this one. Or this one. Okay, no, we want this one. Okay, let's take a look. Here, I have the wrong one again. Here we are. This one's better. Yeah, nice and organized. And turn this guy off. Okay. Let's get to Avram Avinu in Pasachaf. Vayomer Hashem, Zakat Sdom v'amar ki rabba, v'chatam ki kevda ma'od. This is where God begins his conversation with Avram Avinu about Sdom. What's his opening line? There's a cry, we'll see, of oppression, as Rashi explains. The mistreating people in Sdom and Amorah. And it's a terrible cry. It's a great cry. And their sin is very heavy. Oh, sorry about that. I lost my... Put this shit back up. Here we are. Now, hopefully you can see. That should be good now. So again, in Pasachaf, God says there's a cry of oppression from Sdom. And God says as follows, Erda nava ere, I'm going to go down and see. Hatzakata ba'elai asu kala, bimlo ida. Now, it's a little tricky way to explain the pasuk, because how did you understand the word kala? The Parshanim have
Before that, I have a question. Why is Erda na? Why is Erda na? Erda. Why you need the nav there in the middle?
That's a good question.
Oh, that's a good question. In other words, who's God asking permission from?
Right.
Yeah. So if this was only with Avram Avinu, I hear your point. But has God ever used this wording before? Has God ever gone down to check something out before?
Oh, Migdal Bavel.
Before,
Exactly. Let's take a look at Migdal Bavel. And there's something really tricky there in Migdal Bavel. Take a look at the, it's chapter 11, right? I'll make it nice and big. In Migdal Bavel, what does God say? First, God says, Vayera Hashem lirot et ha'ir, bet hamigdal asher banu bnei ha'adam. God goes down to see this migdal that they built. Okay? And then God says again to himself, Hein am echad v'sapach l'ukam. Hey, there's too much unity. That's started. And then either sarcastically or rhetorically, for sure they will be able to, or maybe they won't be able to. I'll leave that alone. But here's the main thing. Pasuk Zayin. Hava nerda uneval Hashem sfatam. Okay? There he says, let's go down. Who's he talking to again? We're not sure. But whoever he was talking to when he made man in the first place, he's talking again in the same plural. They call it the royal plural sometimes, or the royal we. Let's go down. But first he goes down himself. And then he invites others to come down with him and mix up their speech, etc., and switching the languages, and the building project will get ruined. Now, is there another time in Chumash where it says that God's going down to do something?
in Shmot, but that's after.
That's later, but listen, I'm going to jump to Shmot for a minute. Where are we? Shmot. That's in this dialogue with Abraham Avinu at the burning bush. And listen to the wording because it echoes the story in stone. First, God identifies himself to Moshe Rabbeinu. He says, I'm the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And then God begins his conversation with the burning bush, the serious one, as follows, after he identifies himself. Vayomer Hashem, listen carefully. Ro'o ra'iti et oni ami asher b'Mitzrayim. Here again, the verb God sing, and boys he sing, we're understanding the oppression of my people in Egypt. Et sakatam shomati b'bnei noksav. I'm hearing their cry. That's where Rashi gets the idea of shomei tzaka, that it must be the same thing by stone. Ki adati et machovav. Because I know, in the biblical sense, we'll see, I know their pain, I identify with their pain. Ve'ered latzilom be'ad Mitzrayim. I'm going down now to save them from Egypt, to bring them back. Now, remember these verbs? God says to see, he hears cry, he hears a tzaka, he knows that, and he goes down. We got 4 verbs, all right? Let's go to our story. In case you didn't catch on yet. Let's go back now to our source sheet. And what does God say? There's a cry of oppression. Zakat sdom varmaki rabba. So we have a here of tzaka. Erdana, going down. Ve'ere, and sing. Hatzakata ba'ilai asukala bimlo ida. So we have all the exact same 4, don't we?
But no hearing.
Well, we have tzaka.
No, but He sees it.
He,
but doesn't
we
hear
don't, we don't, there's a tzaka coming to him that implies we don't have the verb
Right.
but we have the word tzaka. And the tzaka is coming to him in the sense that he's hearing the tzaka. In fact, it says it twice. It's great, and now he's going down to hear how bad it is.
Rabbi,
Yeah?
who, so, who's doing the crying? The still.
So that's unclear, but I'm gonna cheat a little bit and see how Yechezkel understood this story. Because in Yechezkel chapter 11, you'll see it's not too often, but several times in Tanakh, Yeshayahu, I think Yirmiyahu, for sure Yechezkel, refer to the sin of Sodom, and in fact later in Parshat Nisavim as well. But Yechezkel, more than any other Navi, is very specific in what was so bad about Sodom. And you'll see whenever the in fact, I think I have it here on my source sheet later on. What's Yechezkel say? Hinezeh hayavon Sodom achotech. That's your neighbor Sodom, or your relative in the sense in Sodom. This was their sin. Okay, go on sibat lachem. There was an abundance of bread, and Shabbat v'shafshket hayalo v'natal. There was quiet. It was like a beautiful, quiet community. V'yad ani v'evyon lo yichzika. It didn't take care of the poor and the needy. In other words, it's a wealthy society, nice and quiet, everything it needs, and it did not take care of the poor. And what seems to be, I'll follow Ramban for a minute. Ramban quotes this verse from Yechezkel in his commentary on this week's Parsha, and basically he reaches the following conclusion. He said, there was a law in Sodom of no guests allowed, definitely no poor people. And if any poor person came in the area, they just kicked them out. And if someone dared harbor a guest, everyone got a text message, demonstration. They wanted to make sure that no one comes near their community. Things are good. We don't want to get it ruined. We call it like a gated community. Super wealthy gated community, no guests allowed. And they were like strict on that. Now, they asked the question, why, if that's the case, why is Lot permitted? Because he was wealthy. So wealthy people, they take. Maybe you have to have a yearly, a test period for a year or so to make sure you act properly in the city, as we'll see in a minute. But Lot was accepted, but it seems to be that there's there's a position in stone that if someone is poor, they're not allowed into the city. Now, when you're hungry and looking for food, and you come by this wealthy place and no one gives you a penny, no one gives you anything, and they don't even let you in, people complain about that. So that's the tzaka the Chazal say are coming from stone. We'll see later Yeshayahu understands it in a very similar manner. So let's go back to what God tells Avraham Avinu. The question is, why is he sharing this information with Avraham Avinu? In other words, if people always ask, why is Avraham davening? If you look carefully, Avraham is actually clarifying with God the statement, because why is God sharing this information with Avraham Avinu? Let's follow the conversation. What happens? Let me do it in a better source sheet over here. We don't want that. Here we go. Okay.
The answer is Pasuk Yutet.
We'll go back to Yutet in a minute.
Okay.
But first, I want to figure out what God tells Avraham Avinu. God tells Avraham Avinu, there's a tzaka from Sodom, I'm going down. Why is God sharing this with Avraham Avinu? God's giving him information, but he's prompting a conversation. I'll go back to Brit Ben Abtarim in the conversations. When God tells Avraham Avinu, I'm going to protect you. Don't worry, Al Tira Avraham. I'm going to protect you. That's prompting a response. God wants Avram to enter this conversation. And when God tells Avram, I took you out of Ur Kasdim to give you this land to Rishta, that's prompting Avram's question, how and when is it going to happen? And then God tells him. But when God wants Avram involved in the conversation, there's got to be a reason. Now, remember, there's two dialogues here between God and Avram Avinu. One last week in Brit Ben Abtarim. That's something that Avram needs to know, because that's the story of going down to Egypt, or going down, it turns out being Egypt, in someone else's land, going through oppression and affliction. then redemption, punishing your oppressor, redemption, and only afterwards getting the land of Israel. That's something Avram needs to know because that's going to be an eternal brit. And therefore, if God's going to start a dialogue, one more, it has to be at the same level of importance that relates to the purpose of the chosenness. Again, if Sefer Bereshit is a book given to us by God to understand not only that we're chosen, but why we're chosen, and in that book there are two dialogues between God and man, it's got to be important. So let's see what this dialogue is about. Now, what does Avram say? Let's go back now to our dialogue with in our share, which is over here. Okay.
But
It says as follows.
God starts it, right?
Yeah, God always initiates the conversation.
Right.
With kind and low, that which makes sense.
Mm-hmm. He isn't he trying to show or get Avram to see how you judge. So you get a report that because there's a complaint. And now God says, well, the judge has to come and see if what is this? He says, because
Yeah, that would be fine if God's teaching Avram how to be a judge, and we're chosen to judge other people. And be God.
Or he wants to point out the importance of, or what happens if you don't have the tzedek part.
Okay, so yeah, we're going to see that in a minute, but I want to get to the trickiest part, which has a lot to do with the deliberations we have to this day. Listen to Avram's response. Vayigash Avram vayomar, ha'af tispet tzadikim rasha. Now, how did you translate the word ha'af?
Like, will you allow this?
Yeah, but will that. Want to see something really interesting? And did anyone ever see the Tirgum Onkelos on this?
Let's see.
Yeah, let me share Tirgum Onkelos. Here we go. I need Alator for that. Here we go. Tirgum. Yeah, look at the Tirgum. On this pasuk. Tirgum Onkelos. Okay. I'm sorry, here, back here. Verse 21. I'm sorry, verse 23. Here we go. Okay. Ukriv Avram Bamar, Havir Gaz, Tishetze Zakayim Chayafa. What's rogez mean?
Angry.
How do you say anger in Hebrew?
Kas.
Af Hashem?
Oh, that's true. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that amazing what he's saying?
Yes. In your anger, will you allow this to happen?
Anger, are you going to cause innocent people to die?
Mm-hmm.
Remember Chet Egel? Vayichar pi bahem v'chalem?
Right.
If God would have done what he did, like what he did by the flood, innocent people die. When God brings punishment, and this is so important to understand, and remember we have God's name Elohim, God named Yud Kevavke, etc. But God made nature, and the nature of nature, there's natural disasters, and when there's a flood, and when there's a famine, and when there's a drought, and when there's a war, people die, even innocent people die. Because God might bring a punishment on a society, but when he brings punishment, it's a package deal. And there's what we like to call, I think, collateral damage. Now, is Avram asking God, is it fair? Or is he making a statement, it's bound to happen?
Mm-hmm.
So he goes, you might have a reason to destroy all these people, but take into consideration what's gonna be. Because if you indeed do this, innocent people are gonna die. And let's take a look at it. Now we can go back to my regular source sheet. I'll keep this open. You know what? Maybe let's stay where I was. That's a nice English Hebrew there. Here we are. We had Olach Nasat Orchim, and here we go. Vayigash Avram v'yomar. After God tells him, I'm going down. Now, remember, God doesn't tell Avram Avinu, I've made my decision yet. Let's go back and see what God says. He says, I'm going to go down and see, is the tzaka that's coming to me beyond repair, kala, or is it complete, or kala milashon, finished. Milashon, it's kala milashon kilion, or kala beyond too much. Either way, and again, the Turgum plate goes in this direction. God did not make his decision yet. God's deliberating whether he should or whether he shouldn't. That's what's key. God is in the middle of a deliberation. Should he destroy the city or shouldn't he destroy the city? And therefore, he's not sharing with Avram Avinu his decision. He's sharing with Avram Avinu his deliberation. That's what's important for me. And the question isn't, why is God telling Avram Avinu, I'm going to destroy the city so that Avram will pray for a stone? but quite different. God sharing with Avram Avinu his deliberation, so Avram will understand the ways of God. In other words, I don't think there's anything Avram can do right now to save stone, but we'll see in a minute. There's something Avram needs to know and pass down to his children because this relates to the purpose of his chosenness. Now,
God says to Abraham,
Rabbi,
he says at the end of 19 why he's doing it. L'man havi Hashem al Abraham et asher diber alav.
I'm going to go back to that in a minute.
Okay.
Let me explain why I'm skipping.
Rabbi, Moshe
Yeah.
Rabbeinu asked Hashem, Are'eni darkecha, and he didn't want to do it. So now he's teaching Abraham.
Oh, he tells Abraham, "Harini net kvodecha."
No, but Are'eni et kvodecha, but kvodecha is not only the kavod, it's also
Yeah.
the way. Kavod, in that case, you can translate kavod in few different things, but Are'eni et kvodecha,
Yeah.
I would think is exactly what's happening right now
Yeah,
between Hashem and Abraham to teach him or to show him or to guide him through his ways.
okay, but remember, in that context, Moshe's question is not right away. After God says, "I'm willing to forgive you." Remember when God tells Avram, when God introduces that in the new covenant he's going to make, he's going to reestablish the covenant, and this time there's a possibility of mercy. Then Avram wants to understand how mercy is going to work, and there God says that you'll never understand. When midat hadin you can understand. Remember, the first luchot is midat hadin. It's God's attributes of exact judgment. No, el kanap, okay, navon, and that Avram understands because that's a linear equation. You're good, you're punished. You're good, you're rewarded. You're punished, you're bad, you're punished. Once God says that I might forgive you, and there's no rules when God uses rachamim when He doesn't. That's up to God. That's key to understand. And therefore, God tells Moshe, "Now you can't see my face because beforehand you could see Him face to face." Anyway, that's a class in Shemot. But listen carefully now. I think Avram is saying this as a given. In other words, what will happen if you destroy the city? Innocent people are going to die. And then he didn't say if there's one innocent person, save the city. It's a question of ratio, of threshold. I'm looking for a better word. But ulai yesh 50 tzadikim b'toch ha'ir v'af tisper v'lo tisal makom. He's saying, of course, innocent people are going to die if you bring punishment. But if there's a lot of innocent people, then don't. Let me give you an example from something that relates to decisions Israel has to make all the time. Happens in the army all the time, unfortunately. If there's 1,000 terrorists in a building, in a school building, and there might be one school child there, and those 1,000 terrorists are about to attack us, then you blow up the building and that innocent person is going to die. You don't not blow up the building if there's 1,000 terrorists who are about to attack you because of possibly one innocent child. If there's a school building of 1,000 innocent children and there might be one terrorist hiding in the building, you don't blow up the city. You don't blow up the building. That's Israel's policy. Now, where do you draw the line? You follow? It depends on what political party you're in. Because some people will say, yeah, blow it up anyhow. Unless other people find out about it and we'll get in trouble. But that question, when you bring punishment, innocent people are punished. That's a given. I don't think Avram's saying is questioning how God acts. He says that's a given. That's the way things work. And because things work that way, if you indeed decide to bring punishment, recognize how many innocent people are going to die. And therefore, Avram mentions that in the beginning, and he wants to know what the ratio is going to be, or what the minimum amount is. And
So
therefore, if
that's-
there's 50, yeah, go ahead, Ruth.
Oh, you're saying that the hay is not a hay of she'elah. It's not.
It's a degesh part. It could be. I'm not
Is
building
that
this
what
year
you're
on that.
suggesting? That it's not a questioning ha'af as like,
Yeah.
but it's just a statement.
And I brought my proof from Tirgum Onkelos, right?
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
says, in your anger, your anger will cause. He uses the word af, not in a question,
Like saying
but af in
ba'a.
anger.
Yeah.
Af, yeah.
Ba'af.
And he uses the word. He says there bit berigza. But that's how he understands it. That's not critical for the shir, but it's important to point that out. What I'm getting at is that Avram wants to understand the ways of God, and he's assuming that God doesn't do surgical raids. Got that? Now, it could be God will do a surgical raid, but Avram's assumption is about Lot that that's the way things are.
Okay.
Now, therefore, if God and then Avram continues to clarify, my point is the conversation between God and Avram Avinu is understanding the ways of God in the realm of Midat Adin. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When an evil city, ever since the flood, what do we learn from the flood? When God's angry with society, with human behavior, God can bring punishment. When he brings punishment, it's a package deal.
Mm-hmm.
Correct? Now, what did God promise after the flood? No more total destruction for his entire creation, but he continues to watch over, and he can have specific punishment for a small group of people, for a society. That's what happened with Migdal Bavel.
Mm-hmm.
But God's punishment works at the group level. And when you work at the group level, innocent people die. Now, it could be God works at the individual level as well, but in Chumash we usually see it on a group level.
Mm-hmm.
Except in special cases, which is called Hashgacha Pratit, and you have to be deserving of that. If you know the Rambam Menachot Shuvah, he deals with that question a lot. Now,
it's interesting then that this whole story is Yud Kei Vav Kei. There's no Elohim here.
it's not interesting. It's of course it is. wait till the Akedah where Elohim tells him to take him, and Yud Kei Vav Kei will save him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I told you my joke that does God have emotions? No, so a student asked me, does God have emotions? So I said, of course not, but he gets really angry at people who do. And he gets really angry at people who think that he does. They say Elohim doesn't have emotions. Yud Kei Vav Kei, of course, has Yud Kei Vav Kei is always described with emotions. He has a heart even, doesn't he? He talks to himself. He gets upset. Elohim gets the job done. So I think that's part of the beauty of God, of Chumash using the two names for God. It's so typical. That's how we are. I mean, that reflects not only understanding of God, understanding of what we're able to do and how we need to behave. Now back to the good part. Now, I purposely skipped it. Everyone's already mentioning it. I want to go back now, and the big question is: if this is dialogue between God and Avram Avinu, and God wants to share with Avram Avinu how he acts, why does Avram need to know this? Now, you would think he needs to know this because Lot is in the city. Which one is? Here we go. Okay, let's go back now, and I'm going to highlight these psukim. Okay. I want to read in this way. Let me show you something. Let me open up my my annotator, and this will go. If I'm following the narrative, it goes like this. ויקומו משם אנשים וישקיפו על פני סדום, ואברהם הומך עמם לשלחם. Okay? I'm going to skip Yud Zayin to Yud like I did, because from here I go right to Pasuk Chaf. If I'm following the narrator, okay, the men get up, they're looking over Sdom, וישקיפו על פני Sdom, and then one of them says to Avram, representing God, there's a cry of oppression from Sdom because they're looking at Sdom and say, hey, you see down there? I hear a cry of oppression coming from Sdom, and we're going down now to check it out. If you know, Nachal Arugot goes from Hebron right down to En Gedi, basically right down to the Dead Sea area. So he's saying, I'm going to go down now and check out how bad it is.
Wait, so you're saying that verse 20 is God speaking to Avraham as he's standing there with the other guys?
That's what Chumash is saying.
But
That's
okay.
the three of them.
Mm-hmm.
And Avram is adjoining them. And as they're looking at Sdom, the senior one, as Rashbam explains, one of them spoke on behalf of God already earlier when they yelled at Sarah for laughing. One of these three men represents God. It talks on behalf of God.
Oh, that's interesting.
Now, only later did the two go down. In Perek Yutet, then the two of them go down to check out Sdom, and that's going to be then they're called already Malachim. Now they're still Anashim. But they're speaking on behalf of God. And God says there's a cry of oppression coming from Sdom, and he promises conversation. Now, Yud Zayin to Yutet is not part of the conversation, it's not part of the dialogue. Here, as someone mentioned before, Chumash is talking to the reader, not to Avram Avinu. Here's Vayomer Hashem, God speaking. This is Vashem Amar. That's Chumash telling the reader something the reader needs to know before he continues his story. I call it the deep voice narrator, or if this was being put on in a play, this would be Morgan Friedman with that deep voice. There's something I need to know before the story goes on. And in my opinion, these are the most important psukim in Chumash, in Breshit at least, because we know Avram is chosen. We know God created everything. We know God cares about all humankind. We know God gets upset when things go bad. We know he chose Avram to become a great nation. We never found out why God wants a nation. We know that he wants a nation. We know what's going to happen with that nation. They have to go through suffering and redemption. He knows they're going to have a land, and he has great hopes for that nation. But we never found out yet what's the purpose of that chosenness. And here Chumash finally tells us. And why the build-up? Why not in the beginning? That's literature. Everything's building up to this point. My key point I'm trying to make today is that this is the last time that God talks to himself and the last time he has a dialogue with our ancestors. Not that? Those two things have been happening since the beginning of the book, of God talking to himself and God having dialogues. They all come together here. So this has to be something important. Now, what does Chumash tell the reader? God had said to himself, can I hide from Avram what I'm about to do? Now, what's God about to do?
Destroy stone.
No, he's not about to destroy stone. He's about to make a decision.
Right. Okay.
The B2s didn't take off yet.
Right.
We're in the Oval Office having a decision. So it's not that, I'll give a bad example. It's not that the president made a decision. I'm sending B-52s and then calls up Bibi. I gave you the information and someone argues. Or maybe not something. We call someone else about that, or Kuwait. I'll stop with the analogies. What I'm getting at, God is in the Oval Office having a cabinet decision meeting, okay? And before he makes his decision, he's consulting with Avraham Avinu. Got it? As I like to say, God has a new board member. Got my point? That's what I'm leading up to. Now God has a new board member, and before God makes a decision, instead of consulting with his celestial board members, remember, before God makes man and throws them out of Gan Eden and scatters Migdal Bavel, God's talking with this royal we, with this plural, unclear who. But now, for the first time, God's about to make a decision about his interaction with civilization. And now Avram is being consulted. Why? Not only because Avram can do something now, no. Avram's going to start a nation, and that's the job of that nation. Because what's the underlying theme? When God's about to destroy an evil society, what will cause God to save that society? If he sees there are people who care about that injustice. Not tzaddikim who never said a word of Lashon Hara, but rather, if there's tzaddikim who are upset by that injustice, then there's a chance that maybe there'll be a bigger group if they can do something about it. If there's a bunch of evil people, is there a counter-protest? And that other voice, that group of people, no matter how small they are, I mean, they can't be too small, they have to be at least a million, but one small group of people who are bothered by injustice and care about it and can change it, that gives God a reason to put off punishment because maybe things can get better. Because we're living in a world of tikkun, like after the flood. Remember, Ki Yitzhar Adam Ramanu Rav. We're like society's like a teenager that tends to do bad, but can fix and can learn from his mistakes and mature. So God says, I can't hide from Avram what I'm about to do. I'm about to make that decision. I need to share Avram in my decision-making process. Why? One day Avram will be this great nation, like he told him in Lech Lecha. That's the first thing I told Avram. And it'll bring blessing to all nations. These psukim are key to understand the whole story. And if I don't read them, I miss the whole point of the story. God needs to consult with Avram Avinu because this is the purpose of his chosenness. Because one day he'll be a blessing to other nations. It's going to happen 100 years from now. This is connected to the first dialogue with Brit Ben Abtarim of how we become a nation. So because one day Avram is going to become this great nation and bring blessing, why? Why did God come to know Avram Avinu? Ki adati, ki dativ. It's super important to remember. It doesn't say ki adati, ki dativ. God's not saying, I know this will happen. I came to know him in order that it will happen. See how important that is? Yadativ, I think Rashi is Bachartiv. Why have I chosen him? Okay.
Shavehu Litztaka is the rationale of the Brit Ben Tarim.
Yeah, I want to relate it to Brit Ben Tarim because what's happening in Egypt, in the macro, is what's happening in Sodom in the micro. With the same wording, with the same involvement. It's a wealthy, remember, when Lot lifts up his eyes, let me open up a Chumash. When Lot opens up his eyes, I open up a nice, easy Chumash, because that's easier to read.
We already know in advance that Anshe Sodom are ra'im v'chata'im la'Hashem.
Oh, to Hashem, they're evil to God, even though they don't think they're evil, they think they're righteous. All the midrashim about Sodom are about, they have mishpat without tzedakah. If I look at, what was I showing you? I was showing you, I was looking at Isaiah. Look what Isaiah says in this opening chapter. Remember, our land is desolate. Remember, the Assyrians, Ashur, wiped out our land, wiped out the cities, the 10 tribes, the cities of Judah, and now only Jerusalem is left over. Why are things so bad? Not only is our destruction like Sodom and Amorah, the reason for our destruction is like Sodom and Amorah. And therefore, It's don't blame God, for what blame yourselves. Your behavior is like Sdom and Amorah. They says, who needs all your, remember, don't give me that bull. Yeah, who needs all your korbanot? God says, I've had enough of all these animals. I can't stand you sprinkling the blood, etc. When you come to visit me in my house, you're trespassing. Don't bring me these meaningless sacrifices and these sweet-smelling things. They're an abomination to me. I hate your Rosh Chodesh parties. I hate your Shabbatot, your Mikrei Kodesh. I can't take them. I can't take whenever you gather together. I don't come to shul, God says. I'm not there. Okay, and your Rosh Chodesh and your Moadim. I hate it. They're a burden to me. I can't bear them anymore. And when you lift up your hands in prayer, I'm hiding from you. And the more you daven, I'm not listening. Why? Because your hands are full of blood, of injustice. Clean up your act together, get rid of your bad ways. And then finally, learn to be good. Make sure there's justice. Okay? Get rid of relieve the oppressed. Judge the orphan, and take care of the almanah. And therefore, God says, I'm going to argue with you, God says. I'm willing to clean you if you do better. If you listen and fix your ways, then your land can be good again. If not, war will continue. And then, Echai talazona kiran amana mileti mishpat tzedek elimba. See mishpat and tzedakah? What happened to Jerusalem? It was once a city of justice and righteousness. Now, it's full of murder. It's full of bad business practices. Your money is all counterfeit. Your measures, what you're selling, is all watered down. Your ministers in your government, they're all rebellious. They're all a bunch of ganovim. They're all stealers. They take bribes. They just love rewards. Everything's doing private interest. And instead of using their ministerial positions and running the country to help the poor and the needy, they don't take care of the orphan, and they don't take care of the widow, etc. And therefore, God says, that's why I'm so angry. I'm going to punish you. I'm going to get rid of all your leadership. And then finally, this makes it Tishman Esrei. I'm going to bring back I'm going to bring back your judges like the good old days, and your advisors like in the beginning. And then you can be known as the city of righteousness, Erat Tzedek, a faithful city. And what will bring redemption? Sion will be redeemed with Mishpat, and it can return if we do tzedakah. You can't miss Yeshayahu connecting from this week's parsha to the reason for the Churban. The Churban happens because there's no tzedek mishpat. As long as we're jumping around, we had Isaiah, we had Yecheskel. Let's get Yirmiyahu to put icing on the cake. Yirmiyahu in chapter 22, right before the temple is about to be destroyed. What can save Jerusalem? God tells Yirmiyahu, or God says, go to the royal palace and tell them the following. And tell them, Shema Dvar Hashem Melech Yudah Yoshev al Kisei David. You're sitting on the throne of King David, you and your men. What's God saying? Asu mishpat tzedakah, do mishpat tzedakah, save people from robbery, etc. Get rid of oppression, take care again the stranger, the orphan, the widow. Don't have no violence, etc. Care about life. Don't make sure innocent life isn't killed. If you do that, you can keep your house, you can keep your throne, things will be fine. If you don't listen, this place will be destroyed. Then he goes on and on saying how bad Yehoiakim is. He builds his house below tzedek, the verse without mishpat. All he cares about is his big fancy building projects. Is he in competition with the cedars of Lebanon? Then he compares him to his father. Avicha, your father Yoshio, ate and drank, did mishpat and tzedakah, and that was good for him. He judged the ani ve'evyon, like Yecheskel mentioned. That was good. Halohi adato tinu Hashem. That's what it means to know God. And that's Yirmiyahu. To know God is doing tzedek mishpat. And if you forgot what we read on Tisha B'Av, chapter 9 at the end of the Haftarah, remember? Don't boast how strong you are, how wise you are, how wealthy you are. Those are tools, not values. What should you praise yourself in? What should you go in life? To know God. Remember? To know God. You can't miss this message. I'm trying to show you. Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, Yecheskel. That's the top three. they understood Sdom the way I'm explaining it. It's coming to explain to the Jewish people the underlying purpose of their chosenness. It's not a story about sodomy. It's a story about a wealthy society that God blessed with plenty, and instead of using their wealth to help others, to help other people who are in need, they keep it for themselves. That's what gets God's angry. That's what brings destruction. And we need to know that's what God expects of us. And if God blesses us with a nation, with a land, how we use our power, we need to be prosperous and wealthy and strong. What we do with those, that's not the goal of the prosperity. The goal is to use that as a tool to serve God. And the way we build our society, based on that, God judges us.
Rabbi, is
yeah.
that also a reason why the Milchemet Arba'a v'Chamisha got such a long chapter that Abraham went to help Lot for one single person, opposite of Sdom?
And also to tell us that Abraham won't take a penny from Sdom. Because Abraham's willing to save them and hoping that his actions will get them to be better. I guess it didn't help too much. Because some people are beyond repair, like Sdom. Now, what's amazing is that from the story of Sdom, we have that strange story with Lot and his daughters. From that, we get Moab, and from Moab, we get Ruth, and from Ruth, we get David, and there's a whole Megillah about Chesed and Tzedek and Mishpat with Boaz and Ruth. And of course, David, when he becomes king, he's known for doing Mishpat and Tzedakah. Where's our, remember, David, David, by milk, David, David, Mishpat, Tzedakah, L'chol Hamo. And when David writes Tehillim for his son, he's giving his last will and testament for Shlomo. Shlomo, be a king who does mishpatech lemelech tein b'setcha lemelech. He's praying to God that he'll guide Shlomo to do mishpat and tzedakah. Yadin amcha b'tzedek v'anecha b'mishpat. It goes on and on. And then queens like nations from far away will come and bow down to us. Why? Because other kings will come and bow down to us because they see we're helping the poor and the needy. Because when Malkat Shva comes and visits and hears about how great we are, what does she notice? That God put Shlomo on this throne, to put on the throne of Israel, out of God's love and choosing of Israel, and he made his king to do Mishpat and Tzedakah. That was noticed by an outsider. And then the psukim from Mishael we quoted were here as well. Again, it makes it to Shemon Esrei, as we all know. So let me finish up because then my time's almost done. I'm trying to show you that the way I'm reading the story of Vayera, the story of Sdom, it's not a story about sodomy. God doesn't need a nation to make sure they don't commit sodomy. That's not the topic. The topic is, I need to know why we're chosen. God is angry with the people of Sdom because they don't use their wealth properly. It's a corrupt society, even though technically they might not be doing anything illegal, but the way they run their society is what which makes God angry. Now, Avram, in his prayer, wants to understand the ways of God, and Avram needs to know this because this is the legacy he has to pass down to his children. Not because Avram can do anything now. That's why it's so important. God is sharing this information with Avram Avinu because Avram needs to know why he's chosen and has to pass this down to his children and they to their children. That's why I have this last conversation. And I still like to say God has new board members now. He has a whole nation that has to care about injustice, that can act in a way that can bring blessing to other nations by being the model of acting in this battle with the assumption that behavior is contagious. Now, I just want to point out one last thing. You'll understand what I mean in a minute. And there's a buzzword called Bila Mancha, a leitmotif word, throughout the whole story, and that's to know. Look again at, I'll just open up a regular Chumash here, it'll be easier. I should have mentioned
Ki Yadati?
Yeah, Ki Yadati, but there's way more than that. Yeah. The word to know, remember in the biblical sense, is to know God. We saw in Yirmiyahu is doing Tzedek Mishpat. Bnei Eli don't know God. They're all corrupt. But to know God, Yirmiyahu says it, Micha says it, all the Lenrim. To know God is knowing what he wants from us to do, which is justice and righteousness. Now, in our story, in chapter 18, where are we? We have it twice. We had the pasuk we just had, Ki Dativ, the Manashir. I came to know him. And God tells Avram, Erdana v'reh, and not Eda. God gonna know. Now, in the story of Sdom, what happens? This is just real briefly. They come, Lot Lot's doing a wonderful job. Okay, but it's later at night. Now, Why is he making the matzah? Remember? He insists that they come in fast. No one else invites them in. Now, he's making matzah because it's late at night. It's a quick meal. We're not sure where his Lot's wife isn't Sarah in this case, that's for sure. He's doing everything himself, but he takes care of them. He's making matzah because it's late at night. Why does Chumash bother to mention matzah? Because it wants us to connect the dots and say, hey, this story is a Passover story. Because later, Vayit Mahama is from Pesach. There's Makat Choshech in that story. There's Makat Barad that's going to come down. Amtarat Barad. There's tons of parallels. That's a separate share. I have the source sheet. It's on the second part of the source sheet. How the story of Stone in the micro is Yitzhak Mitzrayim in the macro. So I need the story also to set the stage, but that ties together this conversation with God and Avraham Avinu and Brit Ben Abtarim, which is why we go down to Egypt, to be on the other end of this, to know what it feels like to be oppressed and mistreated, so that we become a nation, we don't do that to others. Now, before they go to bed, the entire city, not a motorcycle gang, but the entire city of Stone comes, everyone gets a message, demonstration, someone's harboring guests. Minarva Zakein Kola Mikatzeh, Chumash is going out of his way to tell us the entire city is outside the door. And they tell Lot, where are these people? How come get them out of that house, take them out, we want to know them. Now, I'll follow Ramban, not we want to know them, we want to sleep with them, but rather, we want to know are they citizens or not? If they're guests, get them out of here. And they're protesting Hachnasat Orchim, which fits to the wider theme of the whole section. If I only had this pasuk, I would think they want to sleep with them. But if I see the wider context, the entire city from young to old wants to sleep with two men, that's crazy. If it was a motorcycle gang, fine. But this is the entire city protesting, and they want to know who they are. And the word ladat is the word Chumash uses to explain how God's going to check out the city. And the reason why God came to know us. It's called a milah madcha. It's a leitmotif word that connects all the parts of the story together. Okay? Now, Lot goes out and tells them, you guys are being evil. No, it's not allowing me to keep guests as evil. And the way I read it is, you know what? I'd sooner give you my two daughters and do whatever you want with them. Just don't touch my guests. He's giving moral judgment of their behavior. I don't think he's really offering his daughters, and they don't want his daughters. They don't take his daughters. That's not on the conversation. He's giving them moral judgment and saying, in my book of values, the honor of my daughters, which you agree with, which everyone in Sdom agrees with. No one would give their daughters to a mob. Okay? He says, in my book of values, taking care of guests is just as important as the honor of my daughters. He doesn't give his daughters. They don't take his daughters. He's being sarcastic and telling them how evil their approach to society is. And what's my proof? What do they say to him? They say, send back, or get out of the way, because we want to get these guys out of the house. But what do they tell the Lot? You're new in town, and you're being judgmental of us? What's it mean by shpot shafot? So I know Rashi says he became a judge that day. I want to claim they're saying, you're being judgmental of our behavior. Mm-hmm. Like Shmuel says, I'm going to judge you how God's always been right and you've been wrong. So they're telling Lot, you're new in town. You're lucky we let you come here, and now you're judging our values, and now we're going to be evil more to you than them, not sleep with you, but rather kick you out of town. And they want to go, they demand Lot that he open the door, and Lot goes and closes the door and saves them, and then they get Makat Choshech, like in Egypt, and God saves them at the last minute. So again, that's my key to the shir. Now, Ramban goes in that direction, but he also says to make sure they didn't come back, they might have raped them to make sure they don't come back again and spread the word. It doesn't pay to go to Stone. That could be. I'm saying the story is not about sodomy. That's my point. It's about tzedek mishpat. That's the theme. And I can even read the entire story, not about when Lot offers his daughters, and when they want to know them, they don't want to know them in the biblical sense to rape them, because then Chumash usually always uses a different word for rape. It's the inui, like we had by Dinah, or the shkab, but not to know. And the except in Pidekish Begiba, but that's built on this story to show you how bad they are. That's the class in Sefer Shoftim. But I'm just claiming that the main topic here, I know the word sodomy comes from the story. That's not the topic. God didn't pick a nation that doesn't go around sodomizing other people. God picked a nation who has to be the role model as a nation, as a people, and society, making sure the tzedek mishpat and protesting when it's not being done, and being the model for other nations to learn from. And that's what I wanted to get across in the thing. And again, that's why it's the last dialogue between God and man until Moshe at the burning bush, where God tells Moshe the same thing. I'm going down. I hear your cry of oppression. I'm going to save you from the oppressor. And it's the last time God talks to himself in Chumash, which is amazing because now he has new board members. And what I'm claiming is it could be the whole reason that Chumash is using this model of God talking to himself is to build up to this moment. Because once I understand Breshit, the goal of Breshit is to understand why we're not only that we're chosen, but why we're chosen. Then the whole tool of God talking to himself and then talking in the plural is all building up to this key moment in Chumash where we finally find out what's the purpose of our existence, of our chosenness. And then it becomes something really fundamental. And it ties back to Brit Ben Tarim.
Thank you.
Okay, any quick questions? The chat's not so full today. I guess it's like
We'll let the rabbi go back to sleep. No?
It's also significant that the doorpost and the door plays such a big role in this story.
Oh yeah,
and
the
of
door,
course,
yeah,
in
with
the
the door.
Mitzrayim story also.
The parallels to Passover, you can't miss them.
Right.
Now, with the parallels to Passover, and that's the next dialogue between God and Am Yisrael, but at the burning bush, and the previous only unique conversation was Brit Ben Tarim, where God says you're going to go through slavery and oppression, and you're going to get it from the other end to know what it feels like. So when you come out of Egypt, you remember you were a slave in Egypt and you were a stranger, and don't do to others what they did to you. Then these two dialogues, that's the main topic of Avram being chosen. So from a literary point of view, because these are dialogues and the unique dialogues, and they all relate to the same theme, and Chumash spells out explicitly by talking to the reader the last time, God speaking to himself the last time, to know that why Avram is being chosen, and tying together his opening line to Avram Avinu, V'eschal Goy Gadol, and bringing blessing to other nations to this key moment. Everything's coming to this point. So why the Akedah story is next, that's too late now. It's too late at night to go into that.
In the Brit Bein HaPetarim, V'he'emin Hashem, it says, Hayach Shaveh Tzedakah. V'he'emin B'Hashem means that Abraham Avinu is the Kirya Ne'emana of Yeshayahu in the first chapter of Yeshayahu.
And this is just to believe, means to support. You support God by how you act.
He himself is the Kirya Ne'emana. V'he'emin B'Hashem.
If you say Eidotechu Nemnu Ma'od, we're going to say tonight in Kabbalat Shabbat. It's your laws that keep what supports what makes the Beit HaMikdash strong and supportive and stand, keeping your Eidot, keeping your mitzvot. Eidotechu Nemnu Ma'od V'Eichana B'Kodesh.
Well, can you take the analogy further and say that God is really warning Abraham about his house, what he may do to his nation, and that Abraham understands this, and when he's davening for Stedom, he really understands that he's davening not for Sodom, but for his own nation.
For his own nation, yeah, I agree. No, he's davening. It's a conversation that's important, but what I'd like to say is, at Yitzchak's bris or his bar mitzvah, when Avram gives a speech, he says, you know what? You were just a child back then, but on the day I got the news of your birth, the day we got the ultrasound, you know what happened? That was 9/11. I was like, something terrible happened, and it's your job. The job of your generation is going to be to fix it. You have to. Something major happened, and the whole reason God gave me a child, and the whole reason you were born, was to pass on this tradition. It's not something extra you need to do. It's for that purpose you exist. And that might explain a little bit why I need that Akedah story to know that there's one core reason for God keeping Yitzchak alive, for the Midat of Rachamim. Maybe Avram might not deserve a child, but in order to fulfill Midat Rachamim, that's why Yud Kevavke comes and saves Avram Yitzchak from the Akedah. I think I don't want to get started with there's too much. It's too complicated a story. I'm saying, but what Marty's saying is, I'm agreeing with, is that we need to know not only this is a little extra kind of thing. This is the essence of our existence. And just read the Rambam in Hilchot Matotanim, how he begins. What has to be the nature of every Jewish community, right, Rabbi? In Hilchot Matnim, that
Yeah. That's the semen of Zeravram. The mitzvah. There's no greater mitzvah than stuck. I assume that's the Rambam you're referring to, right?
yeah.
And that is the semen of
It explains why it's so central in Shemona Esrei. We have a whole bracha about this.
Yeah.
Shemona Esrei.
Okay, we'll let the rabbi take a nap, and you can come back 11:15 Sunday morning. Rabbi,
I was going to give a different title for this one for me called Terem Yishkavun.
Tem what?
Terem Yishkavun.
Yes.
And Jay called.
Okay. All right, Rabbi, we'll see you, please God, 11:15 Sunday. Just a reminder for those who don't come to my shir tomorrow, we're switching with the stop in the clock. My shir is going to be 9:25 throughout standard time, till I guess the beginning of March. So instead of 9:35 in the morning, Gershon, that means you got to get up 10 minutes earlier in California at 6:25, but okay.
But we can hear you in Israel still.
I'm sorry. Yeah. No, it's already too late for the people in Israel. That's
we get you right before ski, I think.
No, the shear starts at 4:25. That's too late.
4:25 Israel time. Oh, that's when it starts. Okay.
Yeah. 9:25. Yeah. People have asked me, have complained. Why do I give the shear Friday? So I give it another time. So I'm very flattered that people say that. But I don't. The truth matter, when I started it, it's because when we started on Zoom, I said I want to have a shear every day. We went to her every single day. And it's not nice to ask somebody else to give a share on Friday because, Friday is busy. So I'll give the share on Friday. So that's basically how I started. And Baruch Hashem, the share in the Siddur has been going nonstop for 4 years. We started right after Yontif in 2021. We're doing Pirkei Avot. Tomorrow is really a week, 100, I think it's class 187. And it would be more, but, before Yontif, I sort of did on the Machzor, so I don't count them in the count. So anyways, so everybody's welcome. If you've missed the first 186 shiurim, you're still welcome to come. And we started Tachanun a couple of weeks ago. We're going through Tachanun, and we do. I hope it's interesting. I think it's interesting, but
every Shir Shoyom during the week, every Shir Shoyom is about Musar. It's giving rebuke to the people, except Friday, right? Each one is each one is talking about our behavior and how we improve.
Okay.
And Friday, we're too busy. We're too busy making Shabbos.
So I figure. So I'll take the Friday.
Hashem Malach. What they call just give Levesh. Friday we have we just talk about God's kingdom.
And of course, the only issue we don't have constantly now is on Saturday. We do have the occasional Saturday night year, but of course, those who remember before COVID, before we had Zoom, we had Adobe Acrobat. That's how we used to do our online classes before 2020. And of course, Rabbi Leibtag is those. I don't know who used to come to a series, Midnight Medrash. The rabbi gave for.
I know the title. It came from Midnight
Saturday night.
It was Midnight Madness from the college
Midnight
playoffs.
Midrash. It was at
but
I think it was 11:30. We started the share at night, Saturday night Eastern time, 6:30 in Israel. I think that's what we did. We had the whole year. We had Midnight Midrash. So whatever. Okay, so that's something we can work on. Who's going to give this Saturday night share, especially in the summer? It's one thing in the winter, but in the summer. Okay, everybody. Thank you for listening, and we'll look forward to seeing you. Please God, 11 shiurim next week, of course, beginning with Rabbi Leibtag, and every day, as I just said, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every day there are shiurim on Torah Motion. Shabbos, you're on your own. You can do Chazara. We'll invent the Shabbos. When electricity becomes totally mutter on Shabbos, then there'll be a whole different story, right? Already it's only an Isha D'Rabbanan at most. It used to be an Isha D'Oraita, and now it's now already you can walk in the street if the lights go on. We're getting there because basically we have no choice. You can't live without using electricity on Shabbos. But that's for another discussion, right? I'm not making this up, by the way. You think about it, how our attitude towards electricity. Everybody uses electricity today on Shabbos. You walk into your shul, I guarantee you, your shul has a security camera. At least I sure hope so. And you're being filmed. Anyways, that's another discussion. Okay, everybody. Laila Tov, Shabbat Shalom, and those who can make it in the morning, 9:25 Eastern Time. Pakasha, we look forward to learning with you. And otherwise, Sunday, Rabbi, at 11:15. And go to bed, it's 4:45 a.m. in Israel. You can't even daven. It's too early to daven in Israel.
Pretty soon, yeah.
Although I'm not going to let you go, because it's Rabbi Leibtag is the one who said in Toronto, remember live, we have to change. You were staying at the Grismans, and you got up at 4:30 in the morning to daven. And Rabbi Grisman said to you, it was in November, it was this time time of year. He said, you can't daven, it's too early. He said, you've been up for 3 hours already. What do you mean? It's after Sosman Tefillah. And Rabbi Leibtag said, if the rabbis, were the way they should be, we would re-change all of Hilchot Tefillah, went through it night and darkness after when they wake up in the morning, because I think you said 40% of people don't work in the time zone they live in. They live and work in different time zones, like now. Rabbi, we work in, so the whole Hilchot Tefillah, we have lights have to change. You remember that? You spoke about that in Toronto?
It could be, but we can pass it now like we do when you go to outer space. So if you're in outer space or in the northern pole, you just go by Zmanei Yerushalayim. So we
Is
can
that
have
what
all
people
Am
do in the
Yisrael
Northern
davening
Pole?
based on the Jerusalem clock.
Okay, God.
Yeah. Anyways,
Then the Hasidim
okay.
will be fine. The Hasidim can daven Shacharis late and they'll be fine.
Okay. All right, everybody. Laila Tov. Hope to see you soon. Be well, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Rabbi. Thank you,
Thank
Rabbi.
you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.